Today will be a very interesting and useful topic. So, it's difficult to imagine an application in which the user does not need to register and go through the authentication procedure, or the user does not need to be authorized in order to be able to perform certain action in the application or access some pages. And that's why today I decided to show you the security bundle. It provides all authentication and authorization features needed to secure your Symfony application. Actually, I already have a ready-made example. I'll show you how it works. And then I'll show you how to implement such functionality in the Symfony application. So, here we have the main page with a sign-in button. Let's click it. And we get to the login page. Also, we can register. Let's try to register in this web page. As you can see, we can log in. It's our personal page, and this user have role user. Actually, it has access only to this page, and for this page, access denied. And for this page, access also denied. Actually, you can customize this page, but I didn't do that. And also we can log out. So, let's go coding. First thing you need to do is set up your project, and link to the videos how to do that I leave in the upper right corner. And the first thing we need to do is install security bundle. Let's find and open the security.yaml configuration file that appeared after installing the bundle. There are three main settings that we need to discuss. The first is providers. It represents the user concept. The second is firewalls. Firewall check if request needs an authentication user, and also it takes care of authentication this user. And the third is access control. This setting is needed to control the required permissions to perform a specific actions or visit a specific URL. Let's start from providers setting. Just imagine that there is some protected section of your application. Some concept of the user is needed. The user provider loads users from database based on some identifier, such as the user's email, unique nickname, or phone number, or something like that. So we need to create a user class that implements user interface. And the easiest way to do this is using the maker bundle and its command. And now we need to update the database schema using this command. After using make user command, some settings in the security configuration file was appeared. This configuration uses doctrine to load the user entity using the email property as user identifier. Next, let's move on to the issue of password security, and in particular to password hashing. Password hashing is defined as putting a password through a hashing algorithm to turn plain text into an unintelligible series of numbers and letters. This is important for basic security hygiene because in the event of a security breach, any compromised hashed password are unintelligible to the bad actor. As a result, the theft of this information is considerably more difficult. So, first you need to do is to make sure that your user class implements the password authenticated user interface. Here it. Then you need to check some settings in the security configuration file. Actually, all these necessary settings should have appeared when you executed the make user command. And now you can hash the passwords using user password hasher interface service before saving users to the database. To simplify my work, I'll use maker bundle and its make registration form command. It creates all the necessary code. Also, I'll immediately install verify email bundle. So, let's do it. As you can see, registration controller was created. The register function uses user password hasher interface, and in this part of the code, when we check is form submitted and valid, we get password from the form and then hash it. And only after that we save the user data to the database. And also this action render HTML page with needed registration form. So let's go to the registration page and try to register. As you can see, password was hashed. Actually, I get this page because when I execute make registration form command, in the last question I answered to redirect user after registration to this error page. I did it because I didn't create any role before. So let's fix it. In this example, I'll not customize HTML pages, forms, and so on. I don't want to waste your time on this. At the same time, you can download the examples that I showed at the beginning of the video on GitHub. I'll leave the link on the description under the video. And we continue to study the security bundle. The next setting in the security bundle is firewalls. It is needed to determine which parts of the application are secured and how users will be able to authenticate, because they can do it not only using the login form, but also they can use JSON login, HTTP basic, login link, X.509 client certificates, the remote user authenticator, or even it can be custom authenticators. This dev firewall is a fake firewall. It is needed to make sure that you don't accidentally block Symfony's development tools. And the main firewall handles all real URLs. And you should know that only one firewall is active on each request. In this case, no pattern K means that it matches with all URLs. Now let's install Profiler to be able to get some information about the execution of any request. you set up the application according to my tutorial, then add these settings in nginx.conf. So, after installing the profiler, the application continues to work correctly with these settings. If we now open profiler, we can see that we not authenticated and we visit this page behind main firewall. Actually, it's not necessary to be authenticated to visit the project pages behind the firewall. If you need to restrict access, for example, to some URLs, you need to use for this the access control section. Now we can move on to creating a login form in which a registered user can authenticate using a unique identifier and password. As you can see, the login controller and the template for login page was created. Now, in the security configuration file, we need to add some settings to enable login authenticator. Once enabled, the security system redirects unauthenticated visitors to the login path. Now we need to edit the login controller to render the login form. Let's refer to the Symfony documentation to make changes to the login controller and the login template. I'll just copy the above example so as not to waste time typing. So, this controller only renders the login form. All job will do the form login authenticator. Let's try to login. As you can see, now we're logged in. And now let's implement the ability to log out. First, we need to activate the logout configuration parameter under Firewall. Also, we need to create a route for this URL, but not a controller. Now let's add a logout button, in that case if user is logged in. And then, using a JavaScript, I'll add an event to the button. When you click on the button, there will be a redirect to the logout route. And now we can try logout. And as you can see, it works, and we move on. Okay, now users can log in into your application, but they still have access to all resources, I mean URLs or method call and so on. How to restrict access? For this, we need authorization procedure, and its job is to decide if a user can access some resource or not. Authorization begins with the fact that the user receives a certain role when logging in. Further, thanks to your code which restricts access to the resource in a certain way, the user, according to his role, receives or does not receive access to the resource. When user logs in, Symfony determines which roles the user has. And you should know that by default all users have at least one role, and it's role user. It's stored in the database as array. In your application you can use any roles you want and call them whatever you want. The only mandatory rule is that role names must always begin with the prefix role. In addition, the name of the role is written in capital letters and underscore is used as a word separator. You will see it. In order not to specify many roles for one user, you can define rules for the inheritance of roles by creating a hierarchy of roles. I'll show it. In this case, user with the role admin also has the role user. And in this case, user with the role superadmin also has role admin and role user inherited from the role admin. Now we can deny access to URLs for users who do not have certain roles, as in the example that I showed at the beginning of the video. So, for this I need to create one more user and define role for each of them. You can restrict access in two ways. First, through the security configuration file and its access control section, and second, through the controller or any other code. And I'll show you both ways. And I'll start with the security configuration file. This symbol means that only URLs beginning with the pattern are matched. So let's create new controller action to check if access control works or not. In this access control section, you can define as many URL patterns as you need. Each of them is a regular expression. And you should know that Symfony starts at the top of the list and stops when it finds the first match. And now let's try to deny access from inside the controller. A special access denied exception is thrown, and no more code in the controller is called. And these two arguments are optional. Here, you can add an optional message for developers. If you use version of the Symfony 6.2, you can also use an attribute to secure some actions in a controller. Since I am using version 6.1, I can't show how it works, but I can show how it will look like in the code. In this case, when the attribute is placed before the class declaration, all actions will only be available to the user with a superadmin role. If we move this attribute here, then the access restriction will only apply to this action. You can also check access anywhere in your code, not only in a controller. For this, you just need to inject security service. And then in your code, you can add a condition that uses the security service and its isGranted method. In this case, some actions will be performed if the user's role matches the check condition. And I completely forgot to mention that you can restrict user access to some interface elements using isGranted helper function in any Twig template. I'll show the example. I want to show you in this video is condition, which will check if the user is allowed to access the resource under some condition. Let me give you an example of what I mean. If the user is already logged into the site, we can restrict access to the login and registration pages for him. For today, it's all. I remind you that the example that I showed at the beginning can be downloaded from GitHub. The link will be in the description under the video. I hope you enjoy this video and see you next time.